All right, I want to introduce my first speaker tonight, and I want to let you know also that there is an economic literacy seminar that he's going to be holding at Wild Ride Ministries in Harbor, and that'll be November 10th and 11th, and you can see Pastor Mike Weaver. Pastor Mike, raise your hand back there. You can see Pastor Mike back there, and he'll be glad to give you more information on that. He did this seminar in Fredericksburg, and it was a tremendous success. And so I would encourage you to encourage your friends to go check it out. So we'll have flyers like this one that will be on the back table in the room. All right, well, without further ado, let me introduce our first guest, Loren Spivack, the free market warrior. And Loren, thanks for being with us.
To make that stop happening. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you. The seminar that we're doing in Harbor is going to be the same seminar that I did in Fredericksburg. I do have two more. I'm receiving those for my next trip to Texas. But if you came to the first and have friends who think you would like it, please have them come by for that. The reason that I do this is that I'm convinced that the future of our country, the future of the conservative movement, is really wrapped up with our ability to understand economics. You know, I'm watching this election very, very closely. And if we can get a leadership in this country, a conservative leadership that's committed to small government constitutional limitations and freedom, there is a fringe benefit that comes along with that, and that is prosperity. And that fringe benefit is not a small detail. It's what ultimately makes everything else possible. It will ensure that this keeps going. You know, when Ronald Reagan won, no one knew what was going to happen, but he shrank the government, he brought prosperity, and we had election victory after election victory. The same thing happened with Margaret Thatcher in Britain. When you have the right policies, you win. And if you're, people say to me, I'm a social conservative, and I'm a social conservative, and I'd like to see social conservative policies too. I'd like to see the judges and the courts change. You're not going to do that in one election. You will do that in several elections. How do you turn one election into several elections? Bring the prosperity, and you'll get reelected. And people say, I'm a national security conservative. I'm worried about ISIS and Putin and China and all that, and me too. But you know where that begins? It begins with prosperity. Okay? The reason we are the most powerful country in the world is that we're the richest country in the world. If you don't have the prosperity, you will not have the national defense either. This all comes together, and we are literally, I think, at a turning point in our history. In any event, when I started off with Matt's group before, I started talking about a kind of crazy, very wrong British mathematician named John Maynard Keynes, who was the father of the idea that government spending would fix the economy. If the government just spends enough money, everything will be great. And I thought, for a little bit of contrast, I would talk today about a different crazy British mathematician whose wrong ideas don't seem to want to go away. And his name was Thomas Malthus. And he was the father, the granddaddy of overpopulation theory. He said that human population grows exponentially, and the food supply only grows arithmetically, and so at a certain point we're going to run out of food, we're all going to starve to death and die. Being a mathematician, he actually calculated this out. He lived in the 1820s, and he calculated that the entire world's food supply would be gone by 1889. That's it. There's going to be no food after 1889. That's it. And when 1889 came and went, there was still plenty of food. You might say, wow, I guess he was discredited. But he wasn't. He wasn't discredited at all. In fact, on today's modern American college campus, he is considered a hero and a sage for warning us about the dangers of overpopulation. And he said other things that were interesting too. He said that we should not feed the poor. He said, don't feed, it's bad to feed the poor. Instead, what we should do is build swamps. And this is what he really said, near where the poor people live, because the swamps will spread malaria, and the poor people will get malaria and die, and that will help to fix the overpopulation problem. And you might think that, having said stuff like that, that would kind of sully his reputation on the modern American college campus, but guess what? You're wrong again. It doesn't bother them at all. I'll tell you another thing. He said, do you guys remember the Irish potato famine from history class? Well, Malthus was in England during the Irish potato famine, and he was telling his fellow Englishmen, whatever you do, don't send food to feed the poor, starving people in Ireland. He said, your compassion, might lead you to want to do that. He said, that's a big mistake, because if we send them food, they're going to keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying, and before long, we'll be up to our eyeballs in Irishmen. Did positions like that get in the way of his being an absolute hero on the modern American college campus? Absolutely not. This doesn't bother them in the least. Racism is fine, as long as you're one of their racists. Then it's okay. And instead of disappearing, Malthus and his overpopulation ideas just moved into a new century of theorists, the most famous of whom was named Paul Ehrlich, who wrote a book in 1969 called The Population Bomb. And Ehrlich predicted that the 1970s and 80s, hundreds of millions of people would be starving to death worldwide. We had just come to the absolute limits of the world's ability to feed the human race, and we were all just destined to die miserably. And that didn't really come true either. Ehrlich talks about microorganisms. He kind of brings this theory up to date. He says if you take a bottle of grape juice and you put it in like a cool, dry spot in your basement, what happens? Microorganisms show up, and they eat the sugar in the grape juice, and they exude, alcohol, and that's how you get wine, see? But it gets interesting because every bottle of wine you've ever had, including the bottles you haven't had, are all 12% alcohol. Have you ever noticed that's right on the label? It's always 12%. Why? Why aren't some wines 11% alcohol and some wines 13% alcohol? You'd think there'd be some variety. But there isn't. They're all 12%. And the answer is a very clear scientific answer, is that at 12% alcohol, the alcohol kills the microorganisms. They produce alcohol, and alcohol destroys them when you get to a certain level of concentration, which, by the way, may sound like a paradox, but it's a paradox we see throughout nature. If we hermetically sealed this room, right, we would all eventually die from rebreathing our carbon dioxide. Okay? It's roughly the same. The alcohol kills microorganisms, and they make the alcohol. And Ehrlich says, that's us. That's the micro. That's the symbol of what's happening. We're going to multiply and multiply, and we're all going to die exactly like the microorganisms in the grape juice. But it's not true. And my question for you today is, what is the error? Why were Malthus and Ehrlich, and literally millions of their followers to this day who absolutely believe in this concept, why are they so wrong? You want to know something? The world's population has doubled since 1950. We have double the population in the world. We use about a third less farmland than we did in 1950. We've reduced the amount of farmland. We've doubled the population. There is far less hunger in the world today than there was in 1950. How do you explain that? You know, they were both mathematicians, Ehrlich and Malthus. Their math is perfect. I checked the numbers. They made no mathematical errors at all. Their error was in failing to understand that economics, this is an economics question, economics has nothing to do with math. Okay? If you're planning to come to my seminar, you can leave your calculator at home. There is no math in economics. Economics is a study of human beings. It's about how human beings behave differently than every other creature under the sun. That's what understanding, and that's what Malthus and Ehrlich totally failed to comprehend. Humans are not like microorganisms in probably more than two, but at least two incredibly important ways. What do microorganisms do? They eat sugar, alcohol, reproduce, and die. There has not been a microorganism in the history of the planet Earth that's done anything besides those four activities. Humans do way more than that. Humans, first of all, solve problems. Microorganisms don't solve problems. No problem has ever been solved by microorganisms. Humans solve problems all the time. Humans innovate, and we innovate through a process of experimentation, which very simply, individual human beings try things different ways. And probably 99% of the experiments fail, because that's the way the world is, and that doesn't even matter. The failed experiments just disappear. They just blow away with the wind. The 1% of the experiments succeed, and we've now figured out a better way to do things. And you know what happens? Within 6 months, the entire world's doing it the new way. You come up with a better idea anywhere, it spreads around the world like a wildfire, and then everyone's doing it that better way. Okay? So the process of experimentation makes all humans richer because we keep figuring out new and better ways of doing things. How many other species do this? None. Not a one. Economics is entirely about the uniqueness of the human condition. There is nothing comparable. You can't make an analogy. It doesn't work because we're not like other creatures. In fact, had Malthus and Ehrlich been writing about the deer in the forest, they might have been right. If there's too many deer in the forest, they do starve. Because humans innovate, deer do not innovate. And so if you understand that, you'll understand the next step of this logic, which is the more humans there are in the world, the faster the innovations come. Because every individual human is a potentially series of experiments. More humans, more experiments. The 1% of experiments that work is going to be a bigger number. We get richer faster with a larger population. And there's only one caveat I have to throw onto that, and that is it only works when people are free. Non-free people do not experiment because they can't experiment. There's 20 million people living in North Korea tonight, and they have no freedom at all. They're not innovating at all because they can't experiment, and it's a horrible country. I couldn't imagine ever wanting to live in North Korea. It's a horrible government. I want you to understand that you, as you sit here, are poorer than you would be if the people of North Korea were free. Okay? You've never met them, it doesn't matter. You would be richer if they were free. Why? Because there's a North Korean today who could be coming up with cures for cancer. New technologies, new software, new energy, any problem at all could theoretically be solved, and we would all be the beneficiaries of that, except they can't because they live in a slave state where they can't do anything. Freedom anywhere makes everybody richer everywhere else. And by the way, it also explains why socialist governments usually end up killing their own people. People are a burden to socialist governments. It's like so many mouths to feed. Let's get rid of some of them, then we'll have fewer mouths to feed. In free societies, that doesn't happen because free societies understand that humans are the ultimate resource. They're not mouths to feed, they're the source of all of our progress and everything we're going to do. And this, so far, is only the first one. The second one, the second unique thing about humans, and something we do that no other creature does, is that we divide our knowledge among ourselves. We specialize in knowledge. And this is incredibly important if you're going to understand how humans reach the level of prosperity that we have reached, is that we divide up our knowledge. Every one of us benefits every day from knowledge that we don't have. Look at your life. Look at everything you own, your car, your house, your cell phone, your TV, your computer, your clothes, your shoes, your eyeglasses. Look at everything that you own. How much of that do you know how to make yourself? Virtually none. Okay? We humans take our knowledge and we divide it up among billions of individual humans and our individual brains, and then we have people who specialize, and we trade with each other so we get that benefit. I depend on my car every day. Do I know how to make a car? I'm in the foggiest idea how to make a car. I don't have to. Somebody else knows how to make a car. The people who made my car don't even speak the same language I do. I've never met them. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I benefit from their knowledge on how to make a car. Okay? This is an amazing thing that our capitalist system does, is it allows us to get the benefit of the wisdom of anybody around the world that we need the benefit of this wisdom from. Okay? So, in effect, all human knowledge is kept where? It's kept in the brains of 7 billion individual human beings who live on planet Earth. Whatever humans know how to do, it's not in your brain, okay? It's in, oh, thank you so much. Was it obvious though? My voice is on. It's in the 7 billion brains of all these different human beings. That's where all human knowledge is. You know a teeny little piece of the world. You know how to run your life. But all of this other stuff, you go to someone else. The brains of the human race, that is the hard drive of the human race, is it not? That's our hard drive. That's where our knowledge is. The bigger the human race, the bigger the hard drive. The more specialization we can. In my seminar, I talk at one point about how I think it takes the specialties of 1 million separate individual humans to make a toaster oven, to make a toaster. Because there's so many different complicated procedures in there. When we talk about all the things we know how to make, from jet airplanes to video cameras to cell phones, and all of the stuff we rely on every single day, it takes billions of people. Okay? As the human population grows, we individually get richer. No other species does that. And this helps to explain why we're as prosperous as we are. How much bigger do you think your brain is than, let's say, a deer's brain in the woods? It's bigger, but it's not that much bigger. Your brain, your brain's not 1 million times bigger. How come you're 1 million times better off? Because you benefit from the knowledge that other humans have. The deer doesn't benefit from knowledge that other deer have. Okay? The human race is in a totally different place. And it's beautiful. And what it tells us is that there is no such thing as overpopulation. We don't get poorer, as Ehrlich and Malthus and 1,000 other scientists predicted. We get richer and richer as our population grows, because it allows for more knowledge, more specialization. The human population of today could never survive on the agricultural technology of 100 years ago. We would starve if we had the agricultural technology of 100 years ago. But the agricultural technology of today would be impossible without the population of today. The two things go hand in hand. As our population grows, we're able to not only handle it, but to make everybody wealthier as long as they're free. That's the caveat that I've always got to put in there. And it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's one of the key places where I think the whole conservative movement comes together, because capitalism, properly understood, is pro-life. Capitalism is about understanding that the greatest gift that God gave us is each other. We make each other richer as long as we're free, and it's beautiful. And I'll tell you something else. We're never going to run out of anything. I've been hearing my entire life since I was a little kid that we're about to run out. Oh my gosh, we're running out of everything. I heard this way back in the 70s. Have we? Have we run out of anything? Don't you think by now we would have run out of something? Just so they could hang their hat on us and say, look, we ran out of nothing. We've run out of nothing. Why is that? Well, first of all, in a free market, it is literally impossible to run out of anything as long as you have market prices, because the price reflects the scarcity, and as anything starts to become scarce, the price immediately goes up, and that will change people's behavior to utilize something else. Capitalism is automatically takes care of this. You will never, literally never run out of anything in a capitalist model. Moreover, most of the stuff you can't run out of anyhow. I've been hearing my whole life, and when my daughter came home from school, in public school years ago, she was like 2nd grade, and she came home and told me we were running out of water. I said, no, we're not. We're not running out of water. We have the exact same amount of water on planet Earth that we had 1,000 years ago. We have not used up a single solitary drop of water. Not one. Running out of water by foot. No such thing is happening. And I told this to a liberal friend of mine, and he said, well, okay, well, maybe we're not running out of water, but we're running out of usable water. And I said, oh, really? So you're telling me we have the same amount of water, but we have less usable water. So if I follow you, we must have more unusable water. Pray tell me, where is all of this unusable water hanging out? Where do they keep it all? Last I checked, 99% of all the water is in the ocean, right? And it evaporates up into the clouds, and it comes out, and it rains down. And they cache some of it in a reservoir, and they pipe it to my house. And then I'm out there hosing down my driveway, and my liberal neighbor says, you're wasting water. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. It was coming down over here. It would have hit the ground over here, except they caught it in the reservoir, and they piped it over here, and I'm just putting it on the ground over here. And moreover, it's going to go into the ground, it's going to go back into the ocean, and the cycle's going to begin again. It is impossible to waste water. I challenge you, go home tonight, get a cup of water, see if you can make it go away. See if you can make it disappear so that your great-grandchildren will not have access to that very same water. Utterly impossible. It's utter nonsense. Nobody talks about this stuff. Okay? Now, it's possible that in a particular area at a particular time, you have a temporary shortage of rainfall, and it may make sense to conserve the water because in this particular area at this particular time, you're not getting as much rain as you'd like. Okay, that may be perfectly logical. It's not because the world's running out of water. It's because you happen to have not had as much rain in this area. And that's fine, but I'll tell you the permanent solution, build more reservoirs. You build more reservoirs, you solve the problem. We don't even catch 1% of the water in the reservoirs. Moreover, you can pipe water from anywhere to anywhere else. You can pipe water thousands of miles. That's not even new technology. The Romans were doing that 2,000 years ago, piping water for thousands of miles. It's not a problem. Okay? So this is very important to understand the politics of today, because the governor of California is a man named Jerry Brown, who is a very big environmentalist, and he has vetoed every single proposal to build more reservoirs in California, because they've got a water shortage. And the obvious solution is to catch more water, and he's against all of that. He's against solving the problem. And it's very interesting because his father, Pat Brown, was also governor of California. Okay? The father and son were both governor. The father was governor back in the 50s and 60s, and they were both Democrats. But the father launched numerous plans to build more reservoirs and more pipes to deliver more water, because the population of California was growing, and he understood that people needed water, and he saw his job as governor to make sure they had enough water. His son, who is also a liberal Democrat, has the absolute opposite point of view, that he wants to prevent people from getting the water. In fact, they're actually taking perfectly good water and dumping it into the ocean, trying to save some like 2-inch long fish, which he thinks is more important than the people and the farmers in California. What happened from one generation to the next? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The Democratic Party got taken over by one of the most evil movements of our time, and that's environmentalism. Environmentalism is evil for the same reason that anyone else is evil. They're anti-human. They don't like human beings, and they don't like prosperity. They want fewer human beings. They want human beings to be poorer, and they're very explicit about this. If you read their books, if you listen to what they teach your kids in public school, there's, oh, humans are a plague upon the earth, humans are horrible, humans are terrible. This is their entire philosophy, and it's time we conservatives, I think, took this on head on. And I'll tell you something, I was doing my seminar for a women's group in I believe it was Wisconsin a while back, and I sent them the syllabus, and she obviously went through the syllabus, and she said, "What's this about overpopulation?" She said, "I thought overpopulation was a problem." And I said, "Well, that's because you haven't had my seminar yet. I'll be there next week, and we'll explain to you why it's not a problem at all. The more people, the richer we all get." And she said, "Well, what about China and India? Don't they have a problem with overpopulation?" And I said, "No, ma'am. They have no such thing. They have a problem with socialism. What made China and India poor is socialism, not overpopulation." And I can very easily prove that, because a number of years ago, both China and India decided to move away from socialism. They've both made their economies much more capitalistic, much less socialistic. And you know what happened? They've both gotten way more prosperous. China and India have been shooting, we're going nowhere. They're shooting up in terms of their level of prosperity. And you know what? Their population's still growing. The population's still growing in China and India. In fact, just as I was leaving my hotel room to come here, I heard that China announced they were ending their one-child policy. Now they've got a two-child policy, which I guess is a degree. I personally have 6 children, so they're not quite up to me yet. But they're realizing it was never the population that was the problem. It was the socialism that was the problem. In any event, this is a message that I think we need to take care of. I think that whatever the election is, in whatever district you're in, whatever state you're in, virtually all the voters are human beings. Being the pro-human, I mean, certain districts in California, I'm not sure, but being the pro-human candidates, the pro-human party, the pro-human movement, that's the place you want to be. That is the future, and it's beautiful, and it's not about saying, "Oh, we got to restrict your water and make you poorer in order to save the planet." No such thing. We make the planet better and better. So anyhow, so there's my economic thought for tonight. I want to take a couple minutes to just tell you about the books I write, because it all started years ago. My friends told me to write a book, and I did, and it was like the wrong book. Everybody thought I was going to write a 500-page tome about economics. And I had an epiphany that people don't read 500-page tomes about economics. You can put that in your coffee table, the dust will be 3 inches thick. No one will touch. If you write something that's fun and funny and accessible, you reach millions of people who are never going to read the economics book. So my first book was called The New Democrat, and it's based on The Cat in the Hat. Has everyone read The Cat in the Hat? It's a book about a cat that shows up uninvited at this middle-class American home. And what's he do when he gets inside? He wrecks the place. I was like, that's Obama. It just worked. And the fascinating thing about the cat is that he never gets it. To the last page of the book, the cat never understands that he's the problem. It's like, it's obvious. And I was like, that's Obama. That's exactly. Can you imagine the man ever coming to perceive that he's the problem? Like in a million years, that thought would never enter his head. And it was just perfect. He's got these 2 little friends, Thing 1 and Thing 2, do you remember? And they became Pelosi and Reed. And I realized I was writing the first published history of the Obama years, all done as the Cat in the Hat. I got my first book review too. Salon.com, I don't know if you read them, but Salon.com said that this was the most twisted piece of conservative propaganda print matter out there. I was a happy man that day. That's on the cover. And I was moved to write my second book. Who's read The Lorax by Dr. Seuss? Dr. Seuss was a huge leftist, lifelong member of the American Socialist Party. He fills his children's books with left-wing lessons for your kids. And The Lorax is about an evil, it was a movie a couple years ago, do you remember that? It was about an evil capitalist who cuts down trees and makes consumer goods. And we are taught that that is bad, bad, bad. He drives the trees to extinction. He wipes them out, they become extinct, and his factory promptly goes out of business. And I read this to my kids. I said, does that make sense? Do you think that socialists destroy species that their business depends on? Do you think that Colonel Sanders is going to drive the chicken to extinction? Is anybody worried about that? Because you can admit it now. If you think Colonel Sanders is going to throw every last chicken into the fryer and they're going to become extinct and we'll never see another chicken again. Because I think it's exactly the opposite. I think Colonel Sanders cares more about the survival of the chicken species than pretty much anybody else on Earth. He cares more than chickens do. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars wrapped up in this. There will always be more chickens as long as Colonel Sanders is anything to say about it. And I'll tell you something else. There are more chickens alive in the world today than ever before in history. Do you know why? Because we like to eat them. That's why. The greatest thing that ever happens to a species is that human beings like to eat you. This is like winning the species lottery, okay? And you can be talking about chickens or cows or wheat, corn, you pick your species. We clear millions of acres just for you. We keep the predators away. We keep you warm in the winter. We feed you. You get sick, we bring in doctors for you. What other species gets treated like that? Now, in the end, we'll kill you and eat you. But that was going to happen anyhow. What do you think happens in the wild if you're a chicken in the wild? How does your life end? You're going to move to Miami and buy a condo on South Beach? Okay, you're getting killed and eaten. And far more unpleasantly in the wild than Old MacDonald's Farm. So this was a book that desperately was in need of parody. Mine is called The Gorax because it stars Al Gore as the Lorax character. And it's about how America used to be free and prosperous. And we were prosperous because we were free. And then the environmentalist wackos took over, and step by step, regulation by regulation, drove everybody out of business. And that's my second story. And then I've only had this for a couple weeks now. It only came to me at the beginning of October. But it's my latest book. I am very proud of it. Where's Colin?
She's back here. Colin.
Oh, there we are. You're way in the back. Okay. My best book?
Yes.
Okay, she was just telling this to me outside, so I figured I'd get the plug in. I wanted to write something about the 2016 election, and my book is called The Wizard of Iz. It's obviously a parody of The Wizard of Oz, and my first thought was that Bill Clinton was the perfect wizard. Because you remember the original wizard's a fake. He's a charlatan. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a lie. And it was like he was just perfect. So he's the Wizard of Iz. When they first meet him, they say, "Are you the Wizard of Iz?" He says, "It all depends on your definition of Iz." And I turned Dorothy into a time traveler. Okay, the tornado blows her from 1900, which is when Frank L. Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz, okay? She gets blown from 1900 into the 2016 election. And it's her reaction to what's happened to her country in those 116 years, which is largely what the book is about. The first line of the book is, "Once long ago, there was no IRS, no EPA, and no HHS." How did people survive? They just managed, I guess, is how the book starts off. So anyhow, so her house lands on Obama, and she finds herself in the land of the free lunchkins, who have just figured out that they become enslaved because they get everything free from the government. They don't have to do anything for themselves anymore. So they're actually kind of happy to be liberated. And I wanted to make this a complete story about what I see are the issues going into next year. And so the scarecrow, remember, doesn't have a brain? Right? My scarecrow has 14 graduate degrees. But they're all in left-wing claptrap. Okay? He's got degrees in gay and lesbian studies and indigenous studies and poverty studies. He knows nothing. And he keeps going back to graduate school, and it doesn't help. So he's trying to figure out still how to get a brain. And the Tin Man doesn't have a heart. My Tin Man is a businessman. He doesn't like paying taxes. And his friend said, "We don't have a heart. If you had a heart, you would enjoy paying taxes." So he's trying to get a heart so he can learn to like paying taxes. And then remember the cowardly lion? I replaced the cowardly lion with a cowardly rhino who suspects that the Democrats are wrong, but he's scared to do anything about it. And so they're all trying to get their problem solved. They meet the witch, they destroy the witch. You kind of have to see it. The wisdom of our founding fathers destroys the witch. The wisdom, and she disappears. Nice. And so they all go home, they all go back to the Emerald City to get their problem solved. And the scarecrow learns that you don't learn by listening to some Marxist professor at a left-wing college. You learn by doing. You do stuff, you learn to do it better. Okay? The professor's never done anything. That's why he's a Marxist professor. And that's what he learns. And the Tin Man learns that you do not help the poor when you pay taxes. Because very simply, and I try to make this very, very clear in my book, the government is in the business of making poor people poor. The line of the book is, as people get poorer and poorer, their votes for the Democrats get surer and surer. Okay, and that's how it works. Okay, the way you help the poor is you produce. Who feeds the poor? The guy in Washington printing off food stamps, or the farmer growing the food? You produce food. That's what feeds the poor. What happens when you produce more food? Price of food goes down. Okay, is that good for the poor? I think so. The United States government has a policy of driving up the price of food by paying farmers not to grow crops. Okay? It's an absolute opposite direction. Okay? Everything you hear about what government's supposed to do, it's virtually all the exact opposite, which is why I hope you'll come to my seminar. But in any event, the cowardly rhino learns that people don't want somebody in the middle. They want somebody with a plan to get things back to the freedom and the prosperity that we used to have. That's what the voters want, not someone who's going to split the difference and go right down the middle. And then Dorothy, I had to think long and hard about Dorothy. Honest to goodness, I was trying to figure out how she was going to go home again. Because that's what she wants. She wants to go back to her life in 1900. And I finally figured out the correct answer is that she can't go home. That's what she learns. You cannot go back again. That is not an option that is given to us. The only thing you can do is seize the moment of the time that you are given, that we do live in, and you make things better. And that's the lesson she learns. That we can go out and change the world right now and make it better. You cannot propel yourself into some previous era. You got to fix the era that you've got. And I realized that was the message not just for Dorothy, that was the message for all of us that I wanted to end my book with. Now, I wanted to finish up on a quick reading, and I think that what I'm going to go with is the Lorax, because this fits with the environmental topic that I was talking about today. So here is how my book, The Lorax, ends. This is after the environmentalist wackos have ended every business, every job. There is nothing left in America except for the Federal Reserve, which keeps printing money. But everything else is stopped. And he says, "So I took a few stones from my factory lot, and I spelled out a word that's worth more than I've got. A word that means everything to one who is lost, because freedom is worth it, whatever the cost. And now that you're here, it's all plain to see that freedom itself just isn't free, unless people like you are willing to fight to bring back our freedoms. It'll never be right. So catch," calls the 1%ler. He lets something fall. It's the Constitution, the last copy of all. "You're in charge of our heritage. Don't let us down. Teach your friends and your children. Spread it around. Stand up for your freedom against socialist schemers, environmentalist wackos, and utopian dreamers. Don't let crackpot economists and left-wing politicians get in the way of your most vital mission. If we can pry our country from these political hacks, maybe our prosperity and all will come back." So thank you so much. You know time to...
Yeah, we can take, yeah. Does anybody have,
You turned it off. Just.
no, it's on now. I had turned it off, now it's on.
Is it green?
Yep.
Oh.
How about that? Green is go. Does anybody have any questions for Loren? Question? Yes.
If the Federal Reserve really can't do anything, can't lower the interest rates anymore, how do they get out of the pickle they got themselves in?
Well, it's an awesome question. The Federal Reserve can't lower rates because they're zero. They can't raise rates. They're pretending that they can't. Every time they even mumble they're going to raise rates, the stock market crashes. Moreover, the $19 trillion of debt, if the federal government had to pay anything like normal interest rates on that, we'd be bankrupt tomorrow. Okay? The one thing the Federal Reserve can do limitlessly, and I predict they will do it because it's the only thing they can do, if you're in a room with 5 doors and 4 of them are locked and barricaded, I predict you will leave through the 5th door. Okay? What is the one door that's open to the Fed? They can print money. And I predict they will do that, and they will do that in response to everything, every contingency that happens, and the ultimate victim is going to be the value of the dollar. I think the value of the dollar is going to be decimated by federal policy, and it's so sad because you go through history, this has happened again and again and again. It happened in Germany between the wars, it happened in Zimbabwe in the 90s, it happened in Brazil, it's happened everywhere, this insane printing money spiral, but we are heading down exactly that path again as if no one had ever seen it before. Was there anything else?
Is there an easy answer to the $17 trillion issue?
You mean how do I pay it off?
How do we
Well,
get out of our problem?
Well, I mean, there's no easy answer. The first answer is to stop borrowing more money. I mean, if you're in a hole, you stop digging. And we could very easily balance the budget without cutting anything that's really useful for the country. I mean, this is all wasted. This is not, the government, you know, the Department of Agriculture pays farmers not to grow crops, okay? And then the price of food goes up. So then that same Department of Agriculture pays for food stamps so the poor people can afford the food that they drove up the price of, okay? You can stop all of this nonsense and lose essentially nothing. That's the first answer. The second answer, as far as actually paying off the debt, I'm a big believer in selling assets. The federal government has trillions of dollars worth of assets that would actually be far healthier to be in the free market. About 1/3 of all real estate in the United States is owned by the federal government. And they do nothing with it. Sell it off, let people actually do something with it, and the money would pay down the debt. The post office, all by itself, is worth billions. Why is that in federal hands? Sell it to the highest bidder, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be my solution to the debt.
First, Loren, I want to thank you, and just for those that didn't attend his class in Fredericksburg, we were there. You've seen he's both entertaining and informative, and we've read your 3 books. They're great. Now, my question. Most of the Republican candidates for president are proposing that we grow our way out of the recession and solve the debt issue. Is it possible to grow our way out of this situation?
Oh, it's absolutely possible, but it begins with shrinking government. That part is correct, but you're not going to grow your way out just by the fact that the president has an R after his name. Okay? Being a Republican does not mean you grow your way out. Mumbling stuff about how great America ought to be doesn't grow your way out. What's preventing the growth of the economy is the government. And I've actually come to the opinion through my research that the taxes are actually a less serious issue than what the government does with the money. Okay? It's not the fact they take it from you, it's what they spend it on that hurts the economy more. So I think if we stop that, we would grow our way out of it, and it's totally possible. That's what the really good leadership, I always, my 3 favorites are Coolidge and Reagan and Thatcher, and that's what they all did. They shrunk government, prosperity boomed, and it does solve these other problems along the way.
Go ahead, one last question.
What happens if OPEC decides to not use the American dollar and goes to the Chinese, what happens?
Well, okay, they'll use American dollars. Our dollar has survived longer than it probably ought to have survived in the world because it's called a reserve currency, because it basically means that everyone else uses dollars for a lot of international transactions. Okay? That's going to stop, not because of what OPEC decides, but because of what we are deciding. We are destroying the dollar by printing it like there's no tomorrow. That's what's hurting the dollar. OPEC at some point is going to make a rational decision that dollars are just not a reliable thing to do business with anymore. They will not have done that. We will have done it. If you think another country can destroy the dollar, how come Stalin didn't destroy the dollar in the 50s during the Cold War? Okay, he would have liked to, but he couldn't because we had a sound economy. Okay, we are destroying the dollar and nobody else. As the rest of the world comes to realize this, they will value dollars less and less, and we will see more and more consequences from our actions. Yeah, thank you guys ever so much. If you'd like to see my books, I'm outside, and I hope if you haven't come to the first one, you'll come and join us in Harper. I think we'll have a blast, and I'll see you there.
Good morning, please.